Hungarian Folk Tales. The Hedgehog. Once upon a time, there lived a merchant, a king, and a poor man. The merchant often went hunting in the forest, and one day he became so very lost that he wandered around for 3 whole days, unable to find his way home. He said, "Oh, if only someone would show me the way out, I'd give him the hand of the most beautiful of my 3 daughters in marriage and 3 sacks of gold. I'll show you the way out if you follow me." The merchant looked down at his feet and saw a snuffling hedgehog. Then the merchant was forced to promise the hedgehog his most beautiful daughter's hand and 3 sacks of gold if he would lead him out of the forest. Then the hedgehog set out, followed by the merchant, and they reached the edge of the forest in no time. The following day, the king also went hunting in the forest, and he also got lost, much like the merchant the day before. The king said, "If only someone would show me the way out, I'd give him the hand of the most beautiful of my 3 daughters in marriage, along with 3 carts of gold." "I'll show you the way out if you follow me." The king looked around to see where the voice was coming from and then saw the hedgehog by his feet. He was so anxious to get out of the forest that he couldn't care less who it was, so he followed the hedgehog and they soon reached the edge of the forest. The following day, the poor man also got lost in the forest. "Oh dear, I have nothing to my name, but even if an ugly beast showed me the way out of this forest, I would willingly adopt it as my own dear child." "I'll show you the way out if you follow me," a voice said. The voice, of course, came from the hedgehog, and it led the poor man to the edge of the forest in no time at all. Time passed, and the merchant, the king, and the poor man had almost forgotten about the little hedgehog. One night, after the poor man had gone to bed, someone knocked on his window. "Father dear, please open the door for me." Who can that be, the poor man wondered, because he knew he had no children. "Hello, Father, I finally come home," the hedgehog said. "Welcome, son, I'm happy you're here," said the poor man. "I am too, and would you please wake my dear mother to make my bed for me?" "Father dear, do you have 2 pennies?" the hedgehog asked. "Yes, I do, my son," said the poor man. "Well then, please go into town, and in the marketplace you'll find a very old lady selling a black cockerel." "Buy it for me," said the hedgehog. "Then go to the saddler, who has a worn-out saddle, and buy that for me too." So the poor man went into town, bought the black cockerel and the worn-out saddle, and took them home, where the hedgehog saddled the cockerel, climbed up onto its back, and rode away as fast as the wind. The hedgehog didn't stop until it reached the home of the merchant, where it said, "Merchant, sir, open the door and let me in." The merchant nearly fell over backwards when he saw the hedgehog, but he had to let it in. Then he called his 3 daughters and told them of the promise he had made to the prickly creature. The merchant's daughters cried and cried, but the hedgehog paid no attention and chose the most beautiful girl and tried to comfort her with the following words. "You are mine, and I am yours, till death do us part." But the pretty girl refused to repeat his words and cried so much that she threw herself down on the ground. But protest as she might, the girl was forced to leave home with the hedgehog. Then the merchant harnessed the horses, put 3 sacks of money into another cart, and off they went with the hedgehog proudly riding its black cockerel alongside. "Are you still crying? I am, and I will cry until my dying day." "In that case," said the hedgehog, "go back to your father." But the hedgehog kept the 3 sacks of gold and took them home to the poor man. Time passed until the day eventually came when the hedgehog saddled its black cockerel and rode off to visit the king of the land. The hedgehog told the king why it had come, hoping the king remembered his promise. "I only wish I had forgotten, but I haven't, and I always keep my word," said the king. He called his 3 daughters and sadly told them what had happened to him in the forest, and now this prickly creature had come here to pick his most beautiful daughter for his wife. "It may think I'm the most beautiful, but I refuse to be a hedgehog's wife. I'd rather die than be a hedgehog's wife. I'll be only too happy to be its wife because it was so kind to my dear father." The king was happy and sad at the same time. He was glad one of his daughters had turned out to be so kind-hearted, but was sad to lose his only kind-hearted daughter. The king loaded silver, gold and diamonds onto 3 carts, harnessed horses to the royal coach, and the princess climbed in. The hedgehog, however, did not go in the coach, but rode alongside on the black cockerel. They had been riding for many hours and were far away from the palace when the hedgehog looked into the coach and was surprised to see the princess happy and not crying. She said, "Why do you insist on riding that black cockerel instead of sitting beside me here in the coach?" "Aren't you afraid of me?" the hedgehog asked. "Why should I, when I know you will do me no harm?" she replied. "Don't you find me ugly?" asked the hedgehog. "Of course not," the princess replied. Then a miracle happened. The hedgehog shook itself and immediately turned into a tall and handsome prince who beamed brighter than the sun. Then the cockerel shook itself and turned into a fabulous stallion. And a palace appeared with walls and windows made of sparkling diamonds. Then they sent for the king, they sent for the poor man, and they sent for everyone in the land to join them at their wonderful wedding feast. And they all lived happily ever after. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Diligent Girl and the Lazy Girl. Once upon a time, there lived an old man and an old woman, and each had a daughter from their previous marriage. The old woman was always angry with her husband's daughter and did not like her the slightest bit. Things went from bad to worse until one day the old woman chased the girl away from home, saying that she should seek work with a rich family. The girl walked and was walking past a pear tree when the tree spoke to her. "Where are you going?" "I'm going to find a job as a servant with a rich family," the young girl replied. "Come here and rid me of my dry branches, and I will do you a good deed in return." Then the young girl walked on her way until she passed a grapevine, and the vine spoke to her. "Come here and hoe around my roots, and I will do you a good deal in return." Then the young girl walked on her way until she passed a crumbling oven. "Please come here and make me tidy and clean, and I will do you a good deed in return. Then the young girl walked on her way until she came across a broken-down well. "Where are you going?" "I journey to find work. Please come here and make me tidy and clean, and I will do you a good deed in return." So the young girl did as she was bid and bailed the stale water out of the well and walked on her way until she met a tiny dog. And the dog said, "Please wash me, brush me and trim me, and I will do you a good deal in return." The young girl cleaned and trimmed the dog, and the dog thanked her, and she walked on her way until she saw a beautiful house. There were fairies living in the house. The fairies asked the purpose of her journey, and so the young girl told them. Then the fairies said, "Why don't you stay here and become our servant? There are 7 rooms. You have to sweep out 6 rooms every day, but you must never go to the 7th room." So the young girl worked for a year and a day, and at the end of the year, the young girl said, "I would like to leave now and go home to show my parents what I've earned." "You have been a faithful maid," the fairies said. "You did as you were told, so now we will tell you what you have earned." "Come here and lie down atop these gold coins. Roll over, and whatever sticks to you is yours. And now go and roll over on the silver coins, and whatever sticks to you is yours." The girl did as she was told, then stood up and bid farewell to the fairies. On her way home, she came across the little dog again that said, "Come here and take as many pearls as you wish." The dog was covered in pearls, and the young girl took the pearls and hung them around her neck. She walked on her way until she reached the well again, where jugs hung so that people could drink from its sweet water. The young girl was thirsty, and so she took a drink and walked on her way. When she reached the oven again, she noticed it was filled with bread and cake, and the oven said, "Come here and eat your fill in return for your good deed." She ate as much as she could, packed more to take home, and then walked on her way. Next she reached the grapevine that hung heavy with ripe fruit. So here the girl stopped and ate and drank as much as she could. Then the girl walked on her way again until she came to the pear tree, and the pear tree said, "I've been waiting for you, as all my pears are ripe." As the girl neared home, the cockerel crowed to announce her arrival. "Cock-a-doodle-doo! My mistress is coming home covered in silver and gold." The young girl heard the cockerel's call and ran home to bring joy at last to her old father. "Cock-a-doodle-doo! My mistress is coming home covered in silver and gold." The old woman shouted, "Be quiet! That's not true." Once again the cockerel said, "Cock-a-doodle-doo! My mistress is coming home covered in silver and gold." The old woman said, "You've earned very nicely indeed, but now my own daughter will go forth and work for a rich family, and she will earn a great deal more than you've managed." When the old woman's daughter reached the pear tree, it said, "Come here and rid me of my dry branches, and I will do you a good deal in return." The girl said, "I will not ruin my pretty white hands and my lovely tiny feet, no matter what happens." When the girl reached the grapevine, it asked her to hoe its roots and to expect a good deal in return. But once again, the girl refused to do anything that might ruin her pretty white hands and her lovely tiny feet, no matter what happened. Next, she reached the oven. The oven asked her to repair it, and it would do her a good deed in return. But the girl said she would not ruin her pretty white hands and her lovely tiny feet with disgusting mud and clay, no matter what happened. Next, she came to the broken-down well. "Please come here and make me tidy and clean." But again she refused to dirty her pretty white hands and her lovely tiny feet, no matter what happened. Then she met the little dog that said, "Come here and trim me." But she refused to touch the dog because she would not dirty her pretty white hands and her lovely tiny feet no matter what happened. Next, she reached the beautiful big house and asked that she be allowed to sleep there for the night. The fairies living there asked her where she was going, and so she told them. In reply, they asked her to stay and work as their maid. They said, "Here there are 6 rooms, and you must sweep them every day, but you must never enter the 7th room." The girl did as she was told and swept the 6 rooms every day and ignored the 7th. But after a while, her curiosity forced her to open the door to the 7th room. To her horror, she saw that it was filled with frogs and snakes, and they bit her and stung her so terribly that by the time she managed to escape, she was covered in blood. And so she left the fairy's house with no payment at all. On her way home, she met the dog and went up to ask for some pearls. The dog said, "You refused to help me, and now I refuse to help you." The girl reached the well and was very thirsty, but was not allowed to drink. When she reached the oven, it was packed with fresh bread and cakes, but she could not eat any of them because when she reached inside for some, it burned her hands terribly. When she reached the grapevine, she tried to pick a bunch of grapes and to drink a glass of wine, but the grapevine pushed her hand away. And when she reached the pear tree, she could not pick a single pear. As she neared home, the cockerel caught sight of her and flew to the top of the fence and let it be known to everyone that, "Cock-a-doodle-doo, my mistress is coming all covered in blood." The old woman went to the fence and said, "That's not true, she's covered in gold." But the cockerel repeated, "Cock-a-doodle-doo, my mistress is coming all covered in blood." The old woman said, "That's not true, because she's covered in gold." The cockerel repeated, "Cock-a-doodle-doo, here comes my mistress all covered in blood." "That's not true, that's not true," shouted the old lady. But the old man said, "Now you can see that my daughter earned more as a maid than yours ever did." This led to such a quarrel that the old woman and her daughter left the old man's home. Then the old man and his daughter lived happily ever after. Hungarian Folk Tales. The 7 Kids. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there lived a mother goat. And the mother goat had 7 young kids. One day the mother goat said, "Now be careful, children, because I'm going to the meadow to bring you fresh grass to eat." "Don't worry, we'll be good," the little kids said. So the old mother goat set off for the meadow, and then she shouted back, "And don't let any strangers in, because I won't be back until evening." The wily wolf had been listening outside all this time. "Well," he thought, "I have my chance at long last." Hardly an hour had passed before the wily wolf went to the window and called into the kids. "Darling children, open the door because I have brought fresh grass for you to eat." The little kids laughed when they heard his gruff voice, "But our mother will only be back in the evening, and her voice is much sweeter than yours." The wolf was furious and ran away until he came to a field full of turnips. There he pulled up a turnip from the ground and ate it to make his mouth dry and his voice sweet. Then he hurried back to the house and called to the kids, "Darling children, open the door because I have brought you fresh grass to eat." And the little kids were about to open the door when the eldest looked out of the window and saw the wily wolf's bony black hand and shouted, "Don't open the door because our mother has white hands, not black." The wolf was furious for a second time. Then he thought for a moment and ran until he came to the village bakery. When he arrived, he asked the baker for a sack of flour to make his hands white, but the baker was busy kneading bread and asked him to wait. But the wily wolf was very impatient and could not wait a moment longer. "I'll be dining on goat meat tonight," and he hurried back to the house. By the time he arrived back, it was late in the day, and he put his hand up onto the windowsill. With his white hand and his sweet voice, the kids were convinced that their mother had returned from the meadow at last. Then the wolf shouted into the kids, "Darling children, open the door because I have brought you fresh grass to eat." And the silly kids jumped for joy because they had fresh grass at last. One kid hid under the bench, the second in the corn bin, the third in the ash bucket, the fourth in the wash basin. The three other kids stood petrified in the middle of the room. They were all so terrified that they would happily have hidden in a matchbox, but there was none in the house because their father did not smoke a pipe. Then the wily wolf pulled the kid out from under the bench, the kid out of the corn bin, the kid out of the ash bucket, but the clock door was so small that his long tongue wouldn't fit inside. "Oh, how full I am," he said, and stroked his fat belly. Then the wolf went out to the meadow where he lay under the mulberry tree and soon fell fast asleep. As evening fell, the mother goat returned home from the meadow and nearly died of shock when she saw the door wide open and her little house empty. She began to call, "Kiddie, kiddie, come here." She was sitting and crying when she suddenly heard a tiny voice speak, "Don't cry, mother dear, because I am here." Then the last of her kids appeared, who was delighted to see his mother, but even more delighted to see the fresh green grass. "And where are your brothers?" Then the little kid told his mother how the wily wolf had tricked them. "Oh," his mother said, "so that is who I saw resting in the meadow when I was walking home. Hurry, child, and fetch me a needle, thread, and a pair of sharp scissors." And while her son searched, the mother goat took a rest after a very tiring day indeed. They soon arrived at the meadow, where they saw that the wolf was still sleeping. "Gather rocks, quickly, quickly." Then the mother goat slit the wily wolf's belly open, and the other 6 kids leapt out. "Now let's teach the wily wolf a lesson," the mother goat said, "and fetch as many rocks as you can while he is still asleep." They soon collected a big pile of rocks and packed them into the wily wolf's belly before their old mother stitched it back up again. Then she told her kids to hurry back home because the wolf would surely be in a terrible mood when he awoke. So the 7 kids all ran back to the house and watched from the window to see the wolf awake. When the wily wolf awoke, he was very thirsty and he thought to himself, "I shall go down to the stream and take a drink because the 6 kids in my belly must be really thirsty." The wily wolf struggled to his feet and he smiled to himself when he heard the rocks rumbling in his belly. When he got to the stream, he leant down to take a good drink, but the rocks in his belly were so heavy that he fell headfirst into the water and was washed clean away. The wolf floated on the water, and the stream passed right before the kids' house, and they laughed when they saw the wily wolf wash past. But the wolf could not swim and was drowned in the deep. And if that wily wolf had not drowned, my tale would have never ended.